Right. Okay. Welcome, everybody. I'm still trying to figure out this technology that everybody else figured out about a year ago. But anyway, we have our first meeting of the year, 2021 general meeting. Dave Piper is, I think, and Bruce. Wait, Bruce, are you handling the technical side of this, or is David doing that?
Dave and Bruce.
Okay. So how many people are on?
Well, whoever's on the screen, but there's people on YouTube too.
Okay.
There, so I'm not sure total.
All right. Well, I think first we were just going to go around and let folks who are on the Zoom who can introduce themselves do so rather quickly. And I'll just start. I'm Bill Bunch. I'm this year's ZNA president. I live on Oxford Avenue between Dyer and Ashby. I've been here 30 years or thereabouts. And it's my pleasure to serve the neighborhood association this year.
Okay, so we're gonna have to, everybody's gonna have to unmute and then mute back up when you're done. So bear with us here. So I'll go. I'm Dave Piper, the past president of ZNA on Jesse Street. I'm secretary now, and set up this Zoom meeting, as you probably tell.
I'm Bruce Weiland. I'm treasurer, and I live on Oxford.
Hamilton. I live in Barton Place on Barton Springs Road. I'm executive vice president.
I'm Megan Paul. I am the membership chair for this year.
I'm Robin Rather, your Parks and Environment person.
I'm Lorraine Atherton. I'm the newsletter editor.
Talk and it comes.
So after everybody introduces themselves, please mute your microphone again, please.
I'm Glenna Balch, and I live on Kinney Avenue.
I'm Dan Rutledge. I live on Collier Street.
We are Anne-Marie and Bob Price. We moved in last April from Harbor. Glad to be in the neighborhood.
Welcome.
I'm Gail Rohde. I live on Margaret Street.
Here, Nick. I live over on Holland Avenue, and with Melissa Johnson, who's also here with me.
Anybody else?
Yeah, David Boykus and Joan Boykus. We're here on Goodrich Avenue.
Right. Is that everybody? Dave, can you tell us, is that everybody?
The only way I can tell is if they say that's everybody.
I think we missed Robert Corbin and also possibly Dan Rutledge.
Oh, no, sorry, maybe I was just too quiet. I'm on Collier Street.
Right. Okay. I think that covers it then. We got a small group, but there's obviously plenty of distractions. Hope everybody's digging out of the mess last week. I know I've been trying to get a water heater fixed pretty much all day today, and it's resisting our best efforts. We're going to start with Bruce Weiland and the treasurer and membership report. Bruce.
Okay. We currently have $10,981 in the general fund, and we have $8,852 in the Holiday Families Fund. We have 195 paid up members, and we have 65 that are in the grace period, for a total of 260 members.
All right. Sounds good. Anything else we need to know?
From me, no.
Okay. Not till we get down to the zoning issues. All right, next we're going to have our Parks and Environment report from Robin Rather, who's our Parks Committee Chair and Vice President for that Parks and Environment. We were supposed to have Heidi Anderson do a short presentation and Q&A. She's the Executive Director of the Trail Foundation, but we had some mix-up in communicating with her on the time and date. So I don't think we're going to have her tonight with us, but we definitely want to have spend some time talking about and getting folks updated on the Zilker Park plan process. So Robin, please take it away.
Great, thanks, Bill. And Bill, let me know, how much time do we have for this segment? I'd love to be kind of interactive with it, but I'm not sure what you have actually have in mind for this.
I think, our other issues are not going to take very long. So I think, let's dive in and as long as people have questions or want to, we have some good dialogue and exchange, we'll do it.
Fantastic. Well, thank you all so much for being here tonight, especially after the, I would like to say it's an interesting intro to our discussion tonight. I think we could safely say last week had a lot to do with climate change and the incredible opportunity that we have coming up to heavily participate in the Zilker Master Plan. I think it's really good timing. And so I don't know if everyone had a chance to read the newsletter. Lorraine, I want to say thank you so much for putting it out and doing such a great job. There is a good overview in the newsletter about what the Zilker Master Plan is all about. What I thought I would do is just hit some of the high points that the city has in mind for this plan. One of the things that your Parks and Environment Committee, we've only met one time, and I know that some of you are wanting to join the committee, and we would love to have you. I know Garrett, I think you signed up. Robert Corbin, I know you signed up too. We have a process for joining the committee. You let us know you're interested. We put your name forward to the executive committee. You actually have to be approved by the executive committee. Once that happens, and we'll do that at the next XCOM. Once that happens, then we'll let you know, and then we'll quickly get you wrapped in. We're meeting weekly right now. We may ramp that down once the plan gets underway and we have a better handle on it. But right now we're meeting Wednesday nights at 7:30 right here on Zoom, our favorite way to communicate, not. Anyway, the master plan, I can't underscore how much it's really a once in a generation. I've lived here 30 years like Bill almost, and we've never really had this kind of chance before to help really determine the direction of the park. And there are competing visions for the park. The city has its vision, which I'll go through in a second. Other people, the Zilker Park is really considered the central park of Austin. So it's not just our neighborhood that feels like it's our park. Of course, over 4 million people come to the park every year, believe it or not. And so getting ourselves up to speed, developing our own ZNA vision of what we'd like to see happen it's a big priority. And then advocating as hard as we can for for what we think is really helpful, not just for our neighborhood, but thinking again, neighborhoods that are less involved than we are, less fortunate than we are, trying to think through our own vision and also really trying to participate in what's best for the whole city. So before we get into the discussion, and just as a little bit of an orientation, in the scope, which if you haven't seen it, I'm happy to send it to you. Just hit me up in the chat or call me on the phone if you want. If you need a copy of the park scope, which is pretty much the outline that they're giving the consultant, there are 11 different outcomes that the city is looking for. This is kind of like their goals. And some of them are fantastic for us. Some of them I think are potentially somewhat disastrous for us. But among those 11 goals, a new visitor center, additional restrooms and picnic tables, new infrastructure and upgrades of utilities are definitely part of the outcomes the city is looking for. They want new design standards. They want, I love this wording, a restorative focus on the historic and cultural built environment to foster stewardship. Also a restorative focus on the ecology and environmental features, including the key watersheds that feed into the park. They want to make the park more accessible, especially for those with disabilities. They want much better interpretive wayfaring, you know, how you know where you are in the park and how to get to another part of the park. The part I believe we're going to have the most difficulty with potentially, but also part of it that could be really transformative. Most of, I wouldn't say most of it, but a big chunk of this scope is about transportation issues. And one of the things that the committee came up to discussing just a little bit, we touched on it, is the city and others sometimes view the park as a transportation corridor. That notion of the park as a transportation corridor is sometimes in conflict with what we think of as a reserve, as a peaceful, you know, contemplative place, a recreational space. And so one of the main things we need to look at is what aspects of transportation are positive for the neighborhood? Could there be better, safer access in and out of the park? What parts of this transportation segment could be, you know, negative for the neighborhood association? Once again, they're talking about potentially considering the expansion of the Mopac Expressway. That's something that ZNA has historically opposed. We're going to have to discuss that and advocate around that once again. They definitely want to improve the multimodal bike and pedestrian access, especially on the very dangerous, beloved bridge, but also somewhat treacherous bridge that crosses from the neighborhood directly into the park over the creek. There's bond money specifically already set aside for that bridge, and we are doing some research to figure out what the plan is for the bridge already and what other considerations the plan might take into account. Lastly, I'll just mention there's a heavy emphasis in this scoping document on new sources of revenue for paying for the park and the maintenance and the upkeep of the park, a heavy emphasis on the public-private partnership aspects that could be really positive. It also could be negative. The revenue element of this, one of the things that came up in the committee meeting that we had was, you know, are they talking about setting up bars and, you know, other sorts of revenue generating amenities that again would, you know, be in conflict with the vision of the park as a quiet, restorative place? Or are they talking about some other sort of more compatible amenities? It's kind of unclear what they really have in mind. There's a big emphasis on a funding plan to go alongside the vision that we're all coming up with. In the past, and this is me editorializing a little bit, but the city has often developed plans, whether they're neighborhood plans or park plans, that were great plans, but that were unfunded. And so in addition to the features and the issues in in the scope. We need to really pay close attention to what are the funding sources that are being developed? Is there enough funding for the plan that everyone comes up with, and so forth. I think that's probably all I want to say, except for one thing. The contract has been signed with the consultant group that's going to run this planning process. And fortunately, the group that they chose is already proven in our region. They did the Blue Hole Regional Park Plan. Our colleague David Baker at Wimberley Watershed Alliance, along with Bill and other people in our neighborhood, David Baker's one of the top environmentalists in this part of Texas, and he gave them rave reviews. That contract, I think, has only been signed in the last couple of weeks, so they're just now starting to get this whole thing going. And hopefully we'll be able to track right along with them and participate right from the beginning. That is a little bit of a prelude. What I would love to do is, really hear from you all. Do you have questions about the scope? Would you like to talk about what your vision is for the park at this point? I'd like to open it up to the floor. And if it's okay with you all, if you just manually raise your hand, I can call on you so we don't talk over each other. Who'd like to go first? Dan Rutledge, it's you.
I think I've heard that funds have been already approved by voters to re-examine the bridge going into the park. And I'd say 99% of the time when I'm entering the park, it's on bicycle. And so that is definitely one place I see where other cyclists are using the sidewalk or being very apprehensive about getting into a lane of traffic. I had some thoughts about it that maybe the best solution is to direct bikes onto a separate, like the trail bridge. If there was better signage around that, I think that would alleviate a lot of people's concerns.
Such a good point. Absolutely. Like I said, and Bill, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that the bond package, the bond was quite a while ago. I can't remember if it was like 2014 or something like that. But in the committee, the thinking was there was something like $29 million already set aside to redo that bridge. Most of the focus of that is on safety. Go ahead, Bruce.
The preliminary engineering hasn't been, we've been trying to get a preliminary engineering plan from them for months, and they still haven't completed the preliminary engineering. They don't even know at this point whether they're going to try to rehabilitate that bridge because it's a historic bridge, or whether they're going to tear it down and just build a whole new bridge. And we're still waiting for the results of the preliminary engineering, and that'll happen before they even start the design for that bridge.
Right. Well, one thing I meant to mention is some of y'all probably know Jed Bowie. Jed Bowie is a community engagement and comms strategist that used to be with Environmental Defense Fund. He's now kind of like a free range consultant, and he is the subcontractor to this plan. And what's good here, Bruce, is I think because they haven't done all the engineering, that we may have a chance to give as part of the engagement process, some good, up-to-date feedback. So Dan, those of you, Garrett's also talking in the chat about the bridge. Those of you that want to give input, let's make sure we get all the detailed ideas that you have so we can funnel those in as soon as the engagement process lights up. All right, good point about the bridge. Becky, hi, hey, how you doing? You didn't get to introduce yourself. Maybe could you go ahead and introduce yourself and then make your comment? And your mute's on.
Good to see you again, Robin.
Yeah, you too.
My name is Becky Taylor. I live at Barton Place, and I am going to be finishing my term on the HOA board there later this week. And I have requested, based on the number of development related projects that are obviously going to be going on around Barton Place, I have requested that we set up a committee to focus on neighborhood development issues. And I have volunteered to chair that committee in its first year. So we are hardly even getting started. I've put the word out that I'd like to let anyone in the Barton Place community that wants to join in the committee to do so. But we're in the foreman of the Foreman Norman Storman stage. And so one of the reasons we wanted to do that is that I noticed over the last several months as we were giving feedback and working very closely, very often with Dave Piper and with Lorraine on messaging back to the city about the 218 South Lamar project, that we really needed a mechanism for communicating a Barton Place position as opposed to a series of positions from individuals who happen to live at Barton Place.
Yeah.
And so we're in the process of doing that starting now. And the primary partner organization that I seriously want to be getting, remaining as connected to as I have felt individually, having at the committee level, that level of connection and communication with ZNA is extremely important, because we're not going to replicate that. What we want to do is figure out what the community within Barton Place wants to say about something. And that's the purpose of this committee. So this is sort of like our inaugural coming out party, if you will. And I'm looking for any and all feedback on the best way for us to fully leverage this new mechanism that we've decided to create.
Well, Becky, I'll let Bill speak to that. I've always respected you. We go way back in terms of, not really, I didn't even know we were neighbors. But professionally, I've known you for a long time. And of course, we welcome y'all's participation. I don't know, it looks in the chat like you're saying you'd like to be on the Parks Committee, and I'll make sure you're on the list that goes up to the XCOM, and absolutely love to have you. And I will send out the scope document. Do you have any comments on the actual park plan at the moment, or just a general, connection?
I have not seen it yet. And so I wanted to sort of introduce the fact that we're doing this. I consider next week to be kind of our first real week. And we'll see who all volunteers, or whether it largely will be me in the early days, kind of forging ahead.
Right.
But yeah, I'd like a week or two. I don't know how often these meetings are happening, but maybe by the next meeting, I might have a more informed thing to say.
Okay, no problem. I'll make sure the scope document gets out. One thing I meant to say in the intro that you probably find interesting is the scope document has really no mention at all of climate or the climate mitigation aspects of the park. It has almost no mention of any sort of rewilding. The vision of the park, is it a corridor? Is it a revenue generator? Is it sort of a party? Is it mainly a recreational place for, runners and teams and that part of it? Is it more of a quiet preserve type of atmosphere? Is it all three of those things in different layers? The scope document, if you read it, and I really advise y'all to read it if you have time, it's not that long, it's pretty straightforward. It's very interesting how this is going to turn out. Who else has a comment that they would like to share, or a question?
Well, I was just going to say a couple of things real quick.
Great.
Becky, great to see you. It's been a long time.
Yeah, good to see you, Bill.
It was really good. We worked well with some of the Barton Place folks fighting off that soccer stadium proposal for Butler Shores there. And we really appreciated y'all's help on that. Currently, it's our understanding that the geographic scope of this planning exercise does not include, that stretch of the park from the creek over to Zach Scott, along the lake frontage. And I certainly think that it should. So that might be something we should advocate for soon, and see if we might get the geographic scope of the planning exercise to include that area. If y'all think that's a good idea, I think it makes sense, but there might be reasons to keep it out.
Yeah, not aware of any reasons not to, at least not at this point. It feels like having that plan start where the Doherty Arts Center area stops might make sense for a lot of reasons.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I think, Bill, to your point, I think that is somewhere east of where Sturzing bumps into Toomey.
Great, Bill. Did you have any other comments that you'd like to make on the scope or your thoughts on the plan coming into it?
Oh, I do, but I'd love to hear from other folks first before I jump in on that. But if nobody else wants to jump in, I'll jump in.
Let me see if I can, let me check in with a few other folks, and then maybe Bill, at the end, we'll loop back to you because I know folks would be interested. Let me see here, Garrett. I know you're interested in this. Do you have any comments or questions on the park issue?
Hey.
Hey.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I don't know if getting into real hardcore details about all the various things and thoughts I have about the park is gonna, that whole discussion is gonna take place tonight. But I think the park is so huge and there's so many different types of people that use it that it's really hard to, even wrap your head around what the potential is of the future of the park without seeing, hopefully, some initial thoughts from the city, or sit down and do more of a deep dive, maybe have everyone email in their ideas and kind of put them together and see if we can come up with what are overwhelmingly popular and then some outliers. But like just even crossing the bridge, I firmly believe you should reroute the traffic away, the bike traffic and pedestrian away from the cars. But there are not a lot of options, and everyone trying to go over that one tiny bridge over the creek with kids jumping off of it, and you're on your bike and people are stopping to take pictures. That whole thing, it's a great spot and it needs to be rethunk as well as, and so I don't know, I think you could break in even, smaller groups to address all those transportation and different various zones. And it's just an amazing place. I mean, I'm excited to hear everybody's ideas.
Great. Thank you so much. All right. Lorraine, I know, I'm not sure how you feel about this, but I know you've lived in the neighborhood a long time. And I wonder, do you have any sort of opening thoughts or comments about this, the whole park plan as we're getting into it?
Oh gosh, I look like I'm in a cave. The big concern for me is when my family first moved to Austin in 1961, our introduction to Zilker Park was as a giant parking place. What people now call the Great Lawn was the parking place where everybody lined up in their cars to watch the 4th of July fireworks. It's come a long way, and anything we can do to get cars out of the park is good by me. And but that's a big obstacle to get over, is to get people out of the habit of driving to the park. And that pretty much folds into the whole global warming, environmental protection, everything that we're dealing with right now.
Yeah, Lorraine, I was going to mention at the in the first committee meeting that we had week before last, there was a lot of emphasis on, hey, we need to get the city to market the other metro parks that are not nearly as trafficked and in many ways are as interesting from a nature and wildlife and environmental standpoint. But I think the traffic mitigation is, I think we've actually been, the committee is interested in doing a neighborhood-wide survey so that we can understand what the priorities are of the larger neighborhood. And actually someone suggested that we also include the Barton Hills neighborhood if we do a survey along with that. And my guess is if we did that, that the traffic mitigation would be one of the top, if not the top issue. Go ahead, Becky. Did you have another comment?
Lorraine, you triggered something for me. On both of the other major developments, the 218 South Lamar as well as Doherty, there's a very large issue with whether traffic is going to come off of those two developments on the Toomey side or on the Riverside side. And one of the things that we have been talking about a lot is Toomey is such a narrow road, and putting pressure on Barton Springs Road with people trying to escape the traffic that will then be on Toomey if they insist on dumping all that new traffic onto Toomey, and the backflow of that traffic into Zilker Park, I think, is a major issue. Imagine people trying to make U-turns because they went to Barton Springs to, get away from Toomey and they want to get to Lamar. So, I think ways to socialize those interdependencies, maybe to council that are not thinking about those sorts of things. I went to the October meeting of the Doherty Arts Center team where they were soliciting community input, and they seemed receptive to that, but I'm sure we need to do a follow-up. But making it obvious that there's an impact of those decisions on Zilker felt to me like it was a little bit of a revelation to some of the members of that team in October.
Mm-hmm. Excellent point. Excellent point.
Okay. On the collaborating with Barton Hills. Barton Hills, for a long time, they're considered the lead, sort of the lead neighborhood most affected by the bridge, the reconstruction of the bridge. So they have a lot of information, I'm sure, and a lot of they know what they need because their neighborhood doesn't have any connection to the outside world except going through the Zilker neighborhood or through Zilker Park and over that bridge and on Barton Springs Road. So yes, we need to work very, very closely with them.
Good point. Okay, would anyone else like to make a comment, or should I call on someone else? Let me see here. Let me check in with Sarah. I don't know if your name is Sarah Hain or Sarah Dane, but Sarah, I don't know if you had a chance to introduce yourself, and if you'd like to or have a comment on the park, we'd love to bring you in.
Hi, everyone. My name's Sarah Dane. I, along with Becky, live in Barton Place, and I've been a member of ZNA for several years. I moved to Barton Place in 2012, but now this is my first time joining one of the Zoom meetings. So I'm just trying to get up to date with everything going on. So at this time, I don't have a stance one way or the other, just trying to collect some information at this point in time.
All right. Well, it's really good to have you. So thanks for introducing yourself. Hey, Anne Marie and Bob, don't know if you can jump in, but do you have any comments on the park discussion we've been having? Any questions or ideas?
I have a question. I'm curious about the traffic issue. I understand it makes good sense to want to reduce the traffic, but how would people come from north side of town to come visit? Are they supposed to take the bus?
Well, I think we have to have a real discussion about that. There is a wing that feels like everybody should stop driving and, bike, bus, walk, all of that. There's also a wing in this neighborhood that is extremely car centric and car dependent. And I think as a neighborhood, we need to figure out how to balance those in a better way. I think how we have it right now, it definitely going in and out of the park, at least it doesn't work well for pedestrians, especially elderly or kids. And I would argue it doesn't really work well for cars. Can we Can we come up with a better balance? I don't know. That's one of our challenges as a ZNA team. And like I said, this is an opportunity for us to think that through. I'm especially interested. The consultant, the design studio, I think is what it's called, that they selected for this. They are very, very good. They're not transportation consultants, which in this case may be a good thing. But they are really good at wayfaring, access, and flow. And so I'm hoping that we can get some really good collaboration. And if you guys are interested in really helping us think through the transportation balancing, I would love to have your help. That's going to be one of the top challenges, is figuring that out. Any other questions or comments that y'all have? Okay. All right, let me see here. David Boykus, I think is how you say your name.
Hi, I'm here with my wife, Joan.
Hey, Joan. It's really good to have y'all. Do you have any questions or comments on the parks topic?
Probably the most interesting thing that I think is going to be our challenge is changing the whole cultural environment of getting away from driving cars. And that's much bigger than this organization can deal with right now, I think. There's only so much we can do with limiting people driving cars in our community. You know, I hate to be negative. I wish we could, but that's a bigger cultural, socioeconomic issue that Austin has to deal with rather than our little community. I do find the bridge is going to be challenging. It is dangerous. There is no question. Walking, riding bikes with your dog, without a dog, whatever, it's a dangerous bridge. And
especially now too, when you're going across the bridge and people are coming the other way and they don't have on masks and it's very narrow. And so people kind of stop and turn, and it's just, so I like the idea of diverting the bikes a different way. I think that's a great idea. And just widening it so that it'd be a little wider somehow, so that when pedestrians walk across. So all of those things I think are beautiful ideas.
Yeah, thank you all so much. And, you know, David, to your point, it is a bigger issue. It is a cultural issue. I think something that that we can do as a neighborhood is figure out how to make it as easy as possible and frankly as fun as possible, let alone as safe as possible, to do something besides drive. And I don't know about y'all, I've noticed during COVID, this neighborhood is a walking, walk-loving neighborhood. And I think it's less about trying to punish people for wanting to drive or people that have to drive, and more about making it, really thinking it through and trying to set, you know, the best example that we can for those that really do not want to drive and don't have to drive. We need to make, I think we can do better than we've got right now.
Yeah.
But I totally agree. It's a big cultural issue. Go, Lorraine. On mute.
Yeah. I'd like to remind everybody how bad it was before the Austin City Limits Music Festival, and the way the city, most cities organized big events in parks. The Aqua Festival that, you know, I grew up with as a child, and when Austin City Limits Music Festival first started up, they came to Zilker neighborhood, and we worked with them to completely change the way big events were staged in Zilker Park. And I actually think as the city becomes more responsive to the need to find other ways to get together and use our parks and make the best use of our parks. I think there's a lot of progress that people will, when people find out how much better it is to ride a bike, people who can ride bikes, who can take other less destructive forms of transportation. It's amazing how quickly those new behaviors can take hold. So I'm actually optimistic about the potential for this planning process.
Yeah, Lorraine, thanks so much. There are a lot of people in our neighborhood that weren't here and don't know about the amazing history and how much things have changed, how much progress we have made. And it really appreciates you bringing that in and helping us all remember that. Okay, hey, Bill, let me check in here. We're having a good discussion. I don't know if you want us to keep going or kind of finish it out and leave the rest for the committee. What would you like to see happen here?
I'd love to have us talk a little bit longer, and if Gail has some thoughts, I'd love to hear those. Gail Rohdes was our Parks and Environment leader for a number of years and has done a tremendous amount of work trying to protect Zilker Park and restore the creek there along Azzy Morton, which I'm extremely appreciative of. So Gail, what are you thinking about with the parks planning?
Well, I have a couple of thoughts. One is the earlier discussion about the bridge, and I'm trying to remember about the scoping document, if it included anything about the bridge, and I don't think it did. So my concern is that the whole bridge planning process is going to be completely separate from this vision planning for the park. And so Robin, you might correct me on that.
Actually, I do think it specifically mentions the bridge.
Okay.
But there's not a lot of detail or anything along the lines of a vision.
Yeah,
And
I think
it's lumped in with go ahead, Bruce.
Right. I think it's a separate project. We have a whole web page on our website about that bridge and the planning documents that are involved in it.
Yeah.
It's
So
transportation and mobility, but I think it's going to be a completely separate project. There may be some peripheral talks, but
Right. So I think that's something we need to keep in mind, because I think it will be separate. It might fast track way ahead of this vision planning. It might be much slower. But I think we need to keep that in mind. And then, which is also kind of dovetails with Becky's point about the planning around Barton Place and Dougherty, that those things are separate too. And it's like the city's not pulling together these developments that are contiguous with the park boundary, but that are going to have major impacts. So I just feel like it's bigger than just this vision planning for the park. There's a lot right on the periphery that we also need to be thinking about. And then as far as the project I've had or led in the park over the last 5 or 6 years, which has been just in the part of the park along Azzy Morton, I just think that there's got to be a lot better coordination with the Parks Department with any kind of volunteer efforts. I mean, volunteers are so important to the parks, and Austin Parks Foundation and Keep Austin Beautiful. There's a lot of nonprofits that are doing a whole lot of work, and yet it's just not coordinated with the Parks Department at all. So I think we need to be thinking about how to integrate that better. So those are my main ideas at this point. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thanks, Gail. Let's see here. Since we seem to be going around all the way, Galena, do you have comments?
No, I'm just trying to catch up.
I totally understand. Gary, how about you? Gary Hamilton, would you like to make any comments and unmute?
Can you hear me?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
I'll tell you honestly, if I had my way, I would take down the bridge and make it a pedestrian walkway. And I know that's outrageous, and even people on this committee probably disagree with that, but the idea of using it as one of the major arteries to get on Mopac Expressway is crazy. Now, I'll tell you, my wife bicycles 3 times a week to Bee Cave Road and 360 where she works. And I worry about that bridge every time she leaves. Anyway, what I would like to do is talk with Becky more about this area. Maybe the two of us can come up with some suggestions to alleviate the problems in Toomey and Barton Springs Road.
Mm-hmm. You know, this probably isn't the place to discuss it. We can do it in the Parks Committee, but there was some discussion originally about, do we need to have a separate transportation group that's really focusing mainly on transportation issues? And I don't know if there's enough people that are interested in that. That may be something that merits some further discussion, Bill. I'm not sure. Well, let me do this. Before we hand it back to Bill, is there anyone else that didn't get to speak? I don't know, Bruce and David. Let's see here. Bobby, why don't you go ahead?
Had to unmute. I was thinking about one of the things that Garrett said. There's a couple of, I don't know, 800-pound gorillas, and this is just at the vision part of it, and that is that he said it was a big, and it's so big that the vision's not going to be one vision. If there's 11 possible visions, I don't understand. I think there maybe ought to be 20 to choose from, and there ought to be at least 10 different areas. One area can be the commercialization. And I know I'm getting farther into the weeds, and this is stuff that's going to go on in other committee meetings about this. But if we limit it to certain areas and let them go hog heaven at it, if they really want to, very close to, not to compete with Restaurant Row, but, or maybe a completely other end of the park, and have it something that's less used and would otherwise be used for parking, put it there, and let the different zones, Barton Springs being obviously a single zone by itself, and its adjacent parking needs there. But the bridge is going to be, it already is a funneling down, especially during events, obviously. And the funneling down makes it a transportation issue that's just, it's one of those 2 800-pound gorillas that's in the road. It's transportation and the fact that it's such a huge, park. And so what I think Gail was saying that it's going to be, and Bruce also mentioned that the funding is driving the fact that it's going to be considered separate. And that's a tragic, fatal error. It has to do with transportation, bridges do, and it's a huge park that has a huge transportation, maybe overuse now. To reroute, like Gary said, to reroute traffic or funnel it traffic to feed Mopac, that's a major expressway. And everything from Travis Heights on over this way, we use that to get on Mopac. The problem there is, and unfortunately for, I agree with Gary, but we can't cross the creek again, because upstream is Barton Springs, and downstream would be having an expressway or a riverside extension that would go along and ruin the park's trails, all that. So There's not any good ways to do it. So I think we're managing cats at this point. We need to have different zones that we look at, and we can restrict what we think ought to be restricted, including transportation and parking overuse, by definition of those zones. So anyway, just a shame to have only peripheral talks. Funding should not whack, it's like the tail wagging the dog. We should not have that happen. This is a major thing. And you can't just exclude the major bridge into it from those design elements. You can't, it just can't be done. So that's it.
Yeah, great comments. Let me go, Bruce, and then Dave, and then Bill, we'll go back to you and get on to the rest of the agenda. Go, Bruce.
Well, I mean, this is sort of some of this is devolved into the Zilker, the bridge going into Zilker Park over Barton Creek. And there's a lot of issues related to that bridge that are unrelated to Zilker Park. It's a historic bridge. I mean, you could solve a lot of the problems with the bridge if it was just torn down and rebuilt, but it's historic. And so unless y'all want to tear down an historic bridge, those issues are going to have to be dealt with. There's lots of other information that we've put together. I don't know if everybody's read it or if you've read it. The Zilker Park Working Group that was established 2 years ago. There's a lot of information and positions from the neighborhood and Barton Hills neighborhood on that. We wrote a separate alternate opinion on the opinion expressed by the working group as a whole, and everybody ought to read that there's a lot of background information on our Zilker Park Working Group page on the ZNA website.
Yeah, and Bruce, just so you know, I have read all of the old, they're not that old, just in some cases a few months. I did go back and read the working group material. It's really extensive. It's such a great example of ZNA at its best. And
but a lot of these issues everybody's been talking about were hashed out and have been documented in that report.
Yes, and I understand, right now everybody's kind of getting their arms around what does this mean? The bridge, I think, it's always been, it's probably always going to be an important topic. And I think in the committee, we will get, in the last meeting, we were able to look at several different issues, everything from climate to the concessions issues, traffic, the actual environmental features, what I would refer to loosely as the rewilding of the park and protecting the wild parts of it that exist now. That's a big topic in and of itself. And what's great about this plan is it's one of the richest projects in terms of the different kinds of content, the different sorts of issues, the different passions that we can all bring to it. And so maybe the best way for us to close this out is to let Dave go and then let Bill finish up. I'll just say before we do that, I love how much energy there is. There is a lot of work to do. There's a lot that's been done that we can build on. We're not starting from a cold start. And I just really appreciate you guys being interested in this. And so let's finish up, Dave and Bill.
Yeah, I've over the last several years, one of my focuses has been trying to get the city, which is city council, the planning commission, the parks department, transportation department, sort of get them moving in, trying to integrate some kind of plan with Zilker Park and the Butler Shores area, which is, where Slosky's and the pitch and putt, between the railroad tracks and Zilker Park, that area there. And so far, I don't think any of those people there's really not any momentum or desire in those groups to integrate that stuff. And I just think if Butler Shores keeps going with sort of ad hoc development, one project at a time, like Slosky's and the Taco Putt Hotel, and there's another one in the works now, that has the potential to really disrupt the transportation planning for Zilker Park if they put a lot of people in there. So that's a focus I'd like to see with the city. And like I say, I haven't seen too much movement on any of those groups I just mentioned.
Good comment. Okay, Bill, I know you said you had a few things you wanted to wrap up with.
Well, we've spent some time on this, and I was remembering I wrote my president's letter in the newsletter, which sort of made some of my key points for now. I really do feel personally, and I want everybody needs to have their opinion, and I'm super interested in finding out what other and more residents of Zilker are thinking about the priorities for the park. But generally, the public has said they want, more natural parks and have their parks be more nature oriented. And, for me, that means, less parking and more park, less development and more, restoration of the environment, as well as the historic sites in the park. There's a number of amazing historic sites there. And as we, really infill the central city with more and more people, our acres of parkland per capita are just, plummeting. And so, every square foot of Zilker Park is precious. And, we need to put it in that context, or at least I hope that we would. So I'll leave it at there for now. I really appreciate though the efforts you're doing, Robin, to get the park committee, on top of this and try to come up with a vision that we do want to put forward as something that's embraced by, if not all, most of Zilker residents. Okay, membership and communications report from Megan, please.
Hi, this is Megan. Sorry, I can start my video again. Hi. So I've been working on a plan with Robin of how to increase membership. We definitely want to get some more membership going in the neighborhood, and we're going to be talking about it at the next XCOM committee and then presenting a plan to everyone at the next general meeting. But please encourage all of your friends and neighbors to please sign up. We definitely want this group to be as involved as possible, especially with all the changes that are going on in the neighborhood. And that's it from me, not a whole lot more.
All right, thank you. Good. Yes, once the pandemic passes, we can embrace some neighborhood get-togethers and membership building events. Okay, zoning committee report. I'm not sure who's taking the lead on that one. Is that you, Bruce? Hello.
I can say a few things about it.
Okay.
So this isn't zoning, but one of the big things is the South Lamar Corridor Plan, which is just now started in Butler Shores between the river and Barton Springs Road. That'll be the first segment. And then it goes all the way to Ben White. It's a rebuild of the South Lamar. It'll take several years, be done in sections. It's not going to go in any particular direction, I don't think, as far as the progress. They could start a segment here and a segment there, and they might do two. I don't know how they're going to go about doing it, but in the end, most of it will end up with a median in the middle and bike lanes and sidewalks on both sides, mostly. So that's that. As far as zoning projects, there's 3 right now that are kind of on our radar. One's again in Butler Shores at Sturzing and Toomey Road. an application's been filed for rezoning there that would allow a 90-foot residential apartment building or condo. I'm not sure what it's going to be. And again, that's sort of about 50% higher than what that all the rest of that zone for. And of course, Schlotzsky's has broken that zoning cap, and the Taco Pud Hotel has broken that. So, you know, I hate to see that stuff get going in there. It's kind of a special area down there, and that kind of height. It's possible, we haven't figured it out yet, but it's possible that a 90-foot building there would be visible from Barton Springs, but I don't know that for a fact. So it's something we're trying to maybe figure out. In addition, just going down South Lamar, there's Genie Car Wash, which has been accepted. The zoning case has been accepted by City Council for mixed use development there. Excuse me, there, but nothing's happened on that for a long, long time, and it's ready to go. But, and of course, you know, there's a couple other places in the works. There's the new Foundations community getting ready to go up next to the old Planet K building, right across the street, more or less. There's a big apartment complex is, you know, well underway there. And then one of the others is on our radar. There's been an application filed again for another zoning that would allow a 90-foot building where Gordo's Donuts is. And those, there's, I think, 6 or 7 lots total combined in there. And we haven't been able to really see a plan with enough detail to really get an idea of what they're trying to do there. And that's also sets on the SOS zone. I'm not sure if it's a recharge zone or the contributing zone or both. So there's some special considerations in there, environmental, that those folks have to deal with. And then the other one that's not in our neighborhood is out Brody Oaks, and that's been in the paper, and that is a very large development, I think 38 acres, and some very tall buildings out out there, 270 feet, I think. That's sort of a different project, and like I say, it's not in our neighborhood, and it's in the Barton Hills neighborhood, so we're kind of following the lead on the Barton Hills Neighborhood Association on just to do a lot of the work and figure things out and kind of see what plays out on that. Did I miss anything? Anybody else on the zoning committee wants to talk about? Or is there any questions from anybody about anything?
The 90-foot tall tower, David, at Sturzing. Is that in the same watershed overlay ordinance as the Schlotzsky's PUD?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. The different, this is pretty wonky. There's a difference in Schlotzsky's and this thing. Schlotzsky's was a PUD, a plan unit development, and this is just a standard rezoning, and the requirements and the rules are different for those two types of projects. And I'm not going to go into all that, but it has different rules than the Taco PUD and the Schlotzsky's PUD.
Okay. Well, we don't have room in the agenda for this, but I'm certainly receptive to talking to you offline about the next level of detail on that one.
Yeah, there's a lot to it. A lot I haven't said about it for sure.
Okay. Because if we have to add a fourth one, oh my gosh, you know, just indicative of the amount of activity going on, then we need to entertain that, I think.
Yeah, and there's some big tracts of land down in Butler Shores there. And now I'm not saying any of these are up for development. I'm just saying there's some big tracts that, such as the Shady Grove is there, and some others. Hell, y'all know where they are.
Yeah.
Either little used or, I mean, anything down there is just prime real estate.
Right. Well, there's a couple of owners that are directly next to that 90-foot request that are not fans of being next to a 90-foot tall building. So it feels to me like there's a different dynamic going on there.
Yeah, there may be.
That's the next level of detail we should talk about offline.
We'll see how that goes. Anybody else got any questions about anything? And there's Code Next that's sleeping and will awaken one of these days with a reconstituted city council and a lot of bad press over the last 6 or 7 years. So, Lorraine.
The other thing that's been percolating in the background is the office building at Heather and South Lamar. During the freeze, it apparently had a bunch of pipes break. I'm not sure what happened on it, but it's been leaking. And Bruce asked about the dumpsters. It's taken its dumpsters out and set them on the sidewalk. So it just seems to be crumbling before our very eyes. It's a good example of how bad it can get when the city starts making variances for buildings that are just not appropriate for their site.
You probably a lot of you know that when they dug that parking garage under that building, that's where La Feria used to be at Heather and Lamar there. When they dug the parking garage, they dug into a spring, and so it's been, I won't say leaking, it's been filling up, periodically fills up, I guess, a cistern, and then it gets pumped out periodically out into the street, flows down and messes up the intersection there at Heather and Lamar, potholes and whatnot there. And that's a long story. I think Bruce and your on our webpage about that too.
Yes, we've got a whole page on that. we've been trying to get information from the city, but they don't really want to talk about it because their solution was not a solution to the water that's being discharged, was a solution to having to have an environmental permit as a point discharge. Their solution was to just spread it out right as it crosses the curb, and then it goes into the gutter and runs down into a storm drain. It's our opinion that they ought to have to, the owners ought to have to build a pipe to the stormwater drain, and so the water isn't flowing across the sidewalk and isn't flowing across the crosswalk. There's a couple of videos on that web page that you can look at, and you'll see people having to cross out almost into Lamar to get across the crosswalk there if they're crossing Heather from the north to the south or vice versa. But they're not forthcoming a whole lot with information from the city.
I think the kind of the bottom line is that to fix it, it's going to require spending some money to lay a pipe underground from the building all the way down to where it hits the sewer on the Mar storm sewer. And that's a fairly expensive proposition. And the building owners don't want to pay for it. And so far the city's not making them pay for it. And the city doesn't want to pay for it, obviously, and shouldn't. And that's where it's at. Anybody else got anything going with any building projects, land development use in the Zilker neighborhood or anywhere else? speak up.
People have questions, Dave. I know we have Paula and Dorsey came on late. I don't know if you want them to do their introductions before we move on.
Sure. Paula, you there? Say hi to us.
Hi.
There you go. Hi, Paula. Hey, Dorsey.
Hi, this is Dorsey. I'm feeling a little worse for wear, not having had a shower in a week, but wasn't that an adventure we all had?
Really?
No kidding.
You want me to run you over a sponge?
I've just been waiting for the water to get good again.
Okay.
Which it has. So I've got great expectations. I just had to make an excuse for how I look in this moment. But anyway, I'm Dorsey Cartwright, live on North Drive. We've been here since 2009. And I'm just interested to hear what's happening with the park and all.
Okay, thank you.
Right.
That's all I got, Bill.
Okay, well, I'll just jump in and say thank you guys and kudos, and Lorraine too. The amount of work y'all do and digging into the details and really figuring out what's going on with these projects is just, incredible. And we're really lucky to have y'all doing that detailed work that's, time consuming and often incredibly frustrating. The development pressures all around us aren't going to go away. And y'all are on top of it. And I haven't heard a word about what's happening with Code Next. I assume that they will try to resurrect it in some form or fashion at some point, but it seems like maybe they're just trying to forget about it for a while. And then the other things, that big project down there at Sturzing and Toomey, that seems to make no sense at all. And the streets are just too, they can't handle all that back in there. But I think that covers our agenda. Does anybody else have any thoughts, comments, or questions about things going on in the neighborhood? Things that the ZNA leadership should be paying attention to? Nope. Okay. Well, we're done.
I'll just throw this out there. I haven't had a chance to figure out how to approach it, but it seems to me that with the freeze and all the pipes breaking, there seems to be a national awakening to really poor building codes, getting away from this emphasis on rewriting all the zoning codes when we're really not paying attention to really important changes that need to be made to the building codes. In terms of weatherizing and energy efficiency, instead of making it all voluntary, it really needs to be, if you're going to cram people into big apartment buildings, the water and power systems for those apartment buildings need to be weatherproof. when a pipe breaks in one of the new apartment buildings on South Lamar, you've got 100 people who are can't live, can't get the elevator up to their house, have water coming through their ceilings, and I think this is an opportunity for us to reach out to all the new residents in these apartment buildings and find out how they fared, how much they've suffered because of these poor building standards and the lax requirements for weatherproofing and energy efficiency. But that's I guess all part of our ongoing efforts to try and figure out how to include everybody in the neighborhood association and efforts to improve our quality of life.
Hey, are you done, Lorraine?
Yeah.
Hey, Bill, I may have one more thing to say. So, it's, for sure, our neighborhood got hammered with the lack of rolling blackouts. I mean, we just got blacked out. And looking at the map of Austin, so the places that stayed on have what they call some sort of critical facility, and there's probably a lot of things that qualify, but kind of the joke around now is, we just need to get a couple of more critical facilities in Zilker so we can keep our power on. Well, that's not the solution, but I think that might be what's happening kind of around town with sort of unplanned growth, and people are putting in, or critical facilities are going in over the years and decades, and pretty soon you've got a huge part of Austin, like looking at the map, it looks like it's almost half of Austin that can't be shut down because they have some critical facility on a circuit somewhere, and that circuit map's not public information, so it's hard to tell exactly without seeing the circuits. You just see the blobs of areas where they are, but unless you really know how they run, it's hard to say how this stuff should go. But it seems to me that there needs to be some thought put into how and where these critical facilities go in, and how and where the circuits that feed those are engineered. And of course, redoing circuits is a huge capital expenditure, but there might be some low-hanging fruit to where you could connect a few here and disconnect a few here, perhaps, and you might be able to get to where these rolling blackouts could be shared more around the city, and not have blackouts, but rolling blackouts.
Dave, I'm so glad you brought that up. And I don't actually know, are energy issues considered parks and environment, or do we have a different way of coming at those? I think it's a little bit scamish how they're defining critical infrastructure, because 40% of the Austin Energy revenues come from their industrial customers, which were not even asked to do any shutdown of any kind, day or night, until I think it was 3 days into the blackout that we had. They weren't even asked. And I think right now the Austin Energy views actual critical infrastructure like hospitals and fire stations, actual critical infrastructure. I don't know how much of a percentage that is from they just lump in their industrial customers into that same bucket. And I think some really hard questions need to be asked. Wait a second, are these buildings downtown lighting up, all night long? really critical versus actual residences in a neighborhood like ours? I think some tough questions need to be asked here. I'm not sure if that's Parks and Environment or we need a different subgroup to do that.
Yeah, I'm not sure either. The that ties into Code Next, actually. The zoning and it's all zoning and planning, and that's something that needs to be looked at. I suggested that to Ann Kitchen, and I sent an email, and I haven't heard back or anything. And of course, they're overwhelmed right now with a lot of stuff. But yeah, that's something that needs to be looked at carefully.
Well, maybe if anyone else is interested in this, drop us a note. And Bill, maybe you and I can figure out structurally I think that's going to be a hot issue for a while, and maybe you and I can figure out with the XCOM how to focalize our efforts as a neighborhood association there.
Okay, that sounds good.
It's a little bit different than what we usually do in zoning cases, because usually we know exactly, where things are in a zoning case, roads and streets and, building here's and there, traffic counts and studies and all the information that we have that's publicly available. But when you start talking about the power system grid, for good reason, that's not public information. And so it's, you really can't, you can advocate for what ought to be done in general terms, but you really can't point out and say, here's a place you can fix things and improve things, because we don't have that kind of access to the network maps, and shouldn't, in my opinion.
All right. Well, I think we've used our 90 minutes for our meeting. Lorraine, when is our next meeting? Did we picked a date? Can we tell people when to get it on their calendar, and I can get it on mine too? Does anybody have that hand?
Bill, it's on our calendar on the website.
Okay. Can you tell me what that is?
It's toward the end of April.
Our website is zilkerneighborhood.org. Click on the calendar button and you'll be there.
Okay.
I can tell you when it is, Bill.
I have to look.
Well, but while y'all are doing that, let me just say, if you're new to the ZNA organization or you haven't been to the website, it is a treasure trove of everything you could ever want to know. It's an incredible archive of everything, pretty much everything ZNA has ever worked on is meticulously detailed. The park scope is on there already. I mean, the ZNA website is, honestly, it is shockingly detailed, shockingly fantastic. And if you haven't had a chance to peruse it, I really recommend it. There's an incredible amount of stuff there.
Well, I take it back, Bill. I apologize. It's not on there right now. It didn't get updated in that. It needs to be uploaded. So
I think it's April 26th, but
okay.
I think.
I thought I wrote it in my old school paper calendar. Yes, the 26th. Monday the 26th. All right. Thanks, everyone. Good luck with your home repairs. Stay warm. Take care.
I know.